Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Police is calling for the suspension of all members arrested in the past week. The committee chairperson, Ian Cameron, says this is to ensure the credibility of the investigations and protect the integrity of the service. Crime Intelligence Head Dumisani Khumalo is among those that were nabbed last week on fraud and corruption charges. Let's speak now to the chairperson of Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Police, Ian Cameron. Ian, good evening to you, and thank you very much for making time for us. Let's start with your understanding of the status of these senior crime intelligence officers that were arrested. Are they still on duty or are they on suspension?
Thank you very much. So at the moment, from what we know, there has been no confirmation whether they are on duty or whether they have been suspended. Today, I wrote to the Minister of Police sharing my concern about the fact that they could potentially still be on duty. And we obviously understand the rule of innocent until proven guilty. But that being said, South African Police Service regulations allow for suspension and to be relieved of duties, especially for serious offences. And I think on this very senior level, it would be critical for the protection or the integrity of these investigations to be upheld, for them to be suspended until further note.
Yeah, and you point to the seniority of these officers. It is about 4 of them in total, unless I'm missing any of them. You'll correct me if I'm wrong. And crime intelligence...
So it's a total of 6, actually. Sorry, I'm interrupting you, but it's a total of 6, and there are other more junior ones as well from previous weeks.
Crime intelligence is a very important component in the fight against crime. How severely compromised is this division then?
Well, it is very frustrating because on ground level, I mean, we all know of operators on ground level in crime intelligence that do incredible work. But if you look, for example, at reports by the Global Initiative Against Transnational Organized Crime, you would note that South Africa almost annually is increasing in terms of how highly we perform with organized crime. In other words, we are in the top 10 countries in terms of how bad organized crime is in South Africa, and the state of crime intelligence is a very good indication of why we are not doing much better. And now, obviously, you need to consider the involvement of the Hawks. You need to consider involvement of entities like the South African Revenue Service, IDAC, in this case, investigating these very members of the South African Police Service. So I know there are many different institutions involved. The problem with this is, to answer your question very simply, is that if you look at the key players or key stakeholders that have been arrested, it makes it extremely difficult to then manage a division like that, because these really are key stakeholders. It includes the CFO, the divisional commissioner, the head of vetting. So all of these are critical or core functions within such a division. And without them, it makes it very difficult to then coordinate or to facilitate any further work in such a division.
Yeah. Can I drill down a little bit more, Ian, if you allow me? I was reading the Sunday Times, and they were reporting on this very arrest of the senior officers. And it appears that one of them actually does not even possess any previous experience in this field. And this is someone who holds a position very high up in intelligence. And if you read that article further, it appears that this officer's appointment may have been some kind of reward for her father, who had done something to make a particular docket either disappear, and therefore the father is undergoing a criminal case as well. Is there vetting, particularly when you're going to be promoted to such a senior position?
So there's meant to be vetting anywhere from a brigadier upwards. So remember, the top ranks from the bottom down, you would go from a brigadier to a major general to lieutenant general to general, who's the national commissioner. If we look at the amount of brigadiers, major generals and lieutenant generals in South African Police Service, and we look at the amount of them who up until very recently and still up until today don't have security clearance, it is a cause for major concern. And the excuse that we very often get is that SSA does not have the capacity to do the vetting quickly enough, etc., etc. Now, my big question is, how on earth can you then appoint someone if that it's a prerequisite that they must have top secret security clearance? Now, in this specific lady's case, who's a brigadier, one of the most difficult ranks to be promoted to because of the significant or very challenging testing that you need to go through, I am very worried about the fact that she got in so easily. And the excuse, again, many excuses that we often receive is that it's in the name of professionalizing the service. It's not the first time that this has happened. We've seen it many, many times before. And, you know, when you look at certain appointments, let's say, for example, the national spokesperson of the South African Police Service, Brigadier Mate, she is a professional appointment. In my opinion, she does a sterling job as a national spokesperson. And her background is not policing. Her background is journalism. Yeah. But she did certain aspects of training, and I think she's done a phenomenal job in professionalizing the service. But putting someone with that kind of background, and let's go back to crime intelligence now, someone that came from working for a certain car manufacturer, and that person is then appointed in a very technical, senior, complex, challenging environment in a sensitive space like crime intelligence, without the relevant background, without the relevant training, and certainly not with the correct security clearance, then obviously it means that we are being compromised at the highest level.
Yeah. Two quick questions, Ian, before I let you go, and I'm going to club them all at once because of time. So you're calling for a Section 34 inquiry as a matter of urgency. You'll explain what that is. But before you get there, there are also worrying reports suggesting the head of the police, we're talking now the National Commissioner, Fani Masemola, could potentially be arrested as part and parcel of the shenanigans, if I could call them that, within crime intelligence. How calamitous is that going to be for the police service?
No, so let me start with the latter. I mean, it would be terrible. It's not the way, these things shouldn't happen. So, and we understand that. I think it's important that we acknowledge what the police minister released, cautioning people not to unnecessarily speculate on this. IDAC has already said there is no warrant for arrest out for the National Commissioner. And I think it could be reckless of any of those institutions to communicate prematurely were there to be something like that. So we need to see what plays out. The Section 34 inquiries, to me, I think is an important way to look at fitness to hold office. There are several regulations within the South African Police Service, and I'm certainly not a labour law or a labour expert in terms of all of the regulations. But what I have seen is that these regulations have helped to previously determine the fitness to hold office, and very often found that someone is fit to hold office if there was some kind of doubt, and otherwise, obviously not. So I think it is one of several tools that can be used. I think a broader integrity test needs to be done, especially with regards to crime intelligence. And I think we should be careful not to just replace the current management with the next runner-up. I think it's very important that if any acting or any permanent appointments were to be made in the future, that we make sure we do everything according to the book.
Ian Cameron, thank you very much for your time, Chairperson of the Police Portfolio Committee in Parliament.